recommended machine configuration for Unreal Engine 5.5. Welcome back. Now, in this session, we are going to discuss about the basic machine that we require to run Unreal Engine. If you are a professional, you need a high-end machine, but as a learner, if you want a minimum configuration, both I'm going to explain it in this session. Let us start with the first thing, what platform we are going to use. So basically, we have Windows, Mac, Linux like this. So basically in this, for Unreal Engine, it is always good to use a Windows-based machine because Mac machines still has some support issues with Nanite and Lumen rendering. You can use Mac, but only thing is, if you have Windows, it is better. But if you already have a Mac machine, any Mac M series chipset is going to support it. Only thing you have to remember is you should have at least 16 GB of RAM and 512 GB of hard disk space. You can use M1, M2, M3, any of this chipset series. But I recommend Windows machine. Now coming to Windows machine, let us start with the CPU. The recommended CPU, if you are doing a professional work, is Intel Ultra i9, that is the 14th generation that you are seeing here. Or you can even go for Intel i7, or you can even go for AMD Ryzen 7000 series. So this is for professional level. However, if you want a minimum system to run Unreal Engine, you should at least have a 12th generation Intel i5 processor or AMD Ryzen 5, that is 5000 and 7000 series. And now you may ask why this is very important, because Unreal Engine uses CPU power extensively for tasks like compiling shaders, building lighting, physics, simulation, AI logic, and general game logic. So it is always advised to use the best CPU. The other point is you should have more cores. At least you should have 8 plus cores and a clock speed of at least 4 gigahertz. Because this significantly speeds up this task, greatly enhancing productivity and reducing waiting time. So this is about the CPU. Now the second one we are going to discuss about is the graphic card, which we call as the GPU. Now the minimum recommended for a professional work is NVIDIA RTX 4070 Ti with 12 GB VRAM. But if you have a RTX 4080 with 16 GB VRAM or RTX 4090 with 24 GB VRAM, it is still better. But it is, I know it is highly expensive. 409, this graphic card itself starts at 2.5 to 3 lakhs. Or you can go for AMD Radeon RX 7900 with 20 GB or 24 GB VRAM. But if you are a student and if it is for the learning purpose, you should at least have an 8 GB RTX 3070 or 10 GB RTX 3080, 10 GB or 12 GB, or RTX 4060 Ti with 16 GB. So this is the minimum requirement that we require regarding this GPU. Why do we need NVIDIA or this high-end GPU is Unreal Engine 5.5 heavily released on GPU-intensive features like Nanite, which we call it as virtualized geometry, Lumen for global illumination, real-time ray tracing, and cinematic rendering tools. A powerful GPU with ample video RAM ensures smooth viewport interaction and stable rendering performance, even with complex scenes involving high-poly assets and advanced lighting. Now, the third factor we are going to discuss here is about the RAM, that is the memory. The minimum recommended memory is 64 GB and it should be a DDR5 RAM. And a minimum, if you are a student and if you are starting, you should have a minimum of 32 GB RAM with DDR4. And you may ask, why do you need this? Because large-scale projects in Unreal 5.5 with numerous assets, detailed texture and complex physics require significant RAM to keep the operation efficient. More RAM allows multiple applications, like you can open Unreal Engine, Blender, Photoshop, browsers, video editor, everything you can open it simultaneously and you can keep working on it without slowdowns. Now, the fourth component is the storage. Now, coming to storage, you should compulsorily have an SSD or NVMe hard disk. Do not use the regular mechanical hard disk. A minimum recommended hard disk is 2 TB NVMe SSD with PCIe 4 or PCIe 5. PCIe 5 will be very good. If your budget allows, you can go for PCIe 5. As a student, if you are starting, a minimum of 1 TB NVMe SSD is required. Now you may ask why. SSD speed greatly influences loading time of project files, assets, and shaders. NVMe SSDs drastically reduce the time needed for importing and exporting huge or large assets, improving productivity. Now, number 5 component that we are going to discuss now is the motherboard. We recommend a high-quality motherboard with good VRM design, and it should have PCIe 5 support and DDR5 support. For example, you have this Asus Tough Gaming Series motherboards. You can use Gigabyte Aorus or MSI Mac. But as a student, if you are starting, you should have a standard motherboard supporting DDR4 with PCIe, at least PCIe 4 support. And you may ask why. Because motherboards with good VRM, VRM stands for voltage regulator modules. So it supplies constant voltage to the CPU. It enables or ensures stable CPU performance, which is critical for sustained workloads. Because your CPU, when you are running Unreal 5.5, it will be running constantly at a CPU usage will be at 75 to 80% constantly. And when it is running or when it is using that resource, you should have a constant voltage supply. That's why see that your motherboard has a good VRM. Now, you should have a PCIe 5 slot support so that in future, when you upgrade GPUs, say for example, if you go for NVIDIA 5000 series, it will extend your machine's longevity. Now, the sixth component, which is very important, is the cooling system. The minimum recommended is a high-performance air cooler. For example, you have Nokia NH-D15 or liquid cooling solution, all-in-one Crosshair H150i. This is minimum required because your machine heats up very fast. And that's why you should compulsorily have a very good cooling system. But the minimum high quality air cooling, minimum requirement is, if you are a student, you should at least go for deep cooled AK620. Now, you may ask why. Because Unreal tasks are often prolonged and intensive. And the CPU and GPU will be running at almost 100% for hours together. And so the efficient cooling reduces thermal throttling, maintaining the CPU and GPU performance. Now, the seventh is the power supply unit. Now, the recommended power supply is at least 850 watts to 1000 watts with Gold-certified PSU from reputed brands like Crosshair or Seasonic. And minimum is 750 watts Gold-certified. You may ask why? Because this ensures stable power delivery to high performance component, avoiding crashes and hardware instability. Now, the eighth component we are going to discuss is the monitor. This is optional, but it is very significant. Actually, you are recommended to have an at least of 27 inches to 32 inches 4K monitor with 3840 to 2160 support, IPS panel with accurate color reproduction. However, you should minimum have 27 inches monitor with a resolution of at least 2560 into 1440 or at least 1920 by 1080, 2K resolution. Accurate color reproduction is crucial for design accuracy, visual quality checks, and final outputs. Now, as an alternative to this monitor, you can also make use of the headset MetaQuest 3S, available from about 30,000 to 34,000 rupees. You can use this as an alternative to the monitor. Means you have a facility called as the Oculus Link, or you have the virtual desktop or immerse, you have some apps, and using this app, you can actually see multiple monitors, like 3 or 4 monitors at a time inside the headset. So just by investing around 30 to 35,000 rupees, you will be getting a resolution of monitor worth nearing 1.5 to 2 lakhs. All big, around 50 to 60 inches monitor, you can just reproduce and use this. So this can be an other alternative for using the monitors. Now, I will give you some example for this ideal configuration. So, say for example, in case of CPU, you can either go to Intel Core i9 14900K or Ryzen 9 7950X, and it may cost you approximately about 50,000 to 60,000 rupees. And when it comes to GPU, go for RTX 4080 with 16 GB or RTX 4070 Ti with 12 GB. And now you have RTX 5070 Ti released with 16 GB. And it may cost in the range of about 80,000 to 1,20,000. A minimum of 64 GB DDR5 RAM with 6000 megahertz, it may cost you around 25,000. Then you need a storage of about 2 TB, that is PCIe Generation 4 NVMe SSD, and this SSD of 2 TB will cost you a minimum of around 20,000. And a motherboard of MSI MPG Z790 Carbon with Intel RX 670 chipset, it will minimum cost you around 30,000. It is better if you can go to Asus tough gaming motherboards or gigabyte motherboards like X890, etc., which will cost you around the same rate. Now, for cooling system, you can go for Crosshair ICUH 150i, a light liquid cooler, which may cost you around 15,000, whereas the higher end will cost you another 8 to 10,000 extra. For power supply, Crosshair RM850X 850 watts gold standard will cost you around 12,000, and a monitor Dell UltraSharp U2723QE 27 inches 4K IPS will cost you 45,000. If you doesn't have such a budget, you can go for the Samsung 32-inch curved monitor of 1920 into 1080, which is also reasonably good. And now, the approximate cost of this entire setup will work out to you around 2,77,000 to 3 lakh rupees. An example for a budget-conscious configuration will be, you can go for an Intel iCore i7 13700K or Ryzen 7700X, which may cost you around 35,000. You can go for RTX 4060 Ti with 16 GB or RTX 4070 with 12 GB, which may cost you around 50,000 to 60,000. You can go for 32 GB DDR5, which may cost you around 12,000. You can go for an SSD of 1 TB NVMe, which may cost you around 10,000. And you can go for MSI MACB 760 Wi-Fi motherboard, which may cost you around 18,000. And cooling system Deepcool AK620, which costs around 5,500. Then power supply Crosshair RM750, which costs around 9,000. And a 27 inches Dell, LG or Asus display, which may cost around 18 to 20,000. And this cost will work out to approximately around 1,50,000. This balanced approach ensures an efficient workflow, avoids unnecessary overspending, and achieves optimal performance for working effectively with Unreal Engine 5.5. Now, one thing is, after you have known about the recommended system needed for Unreal 5.5, they are providing you an option here wherein, say for example, you initially have no money to invest, or still you are thinking about whether to enter this field or not. You have to first test whether it will work out for you or not. So investing 3-4 lakhs, and if it is not your cup of tea, then it might be a dead investment. The other option you have is, we have our studio in Bangalore. I will share the link. And we have right from the high-end GPU of around 8 to 10 lakh rupees machine to a 2 lakh machine. So we have around 5 workstation. You can come over to our place. So this study material is free for you. We are already posting it on YouTube. Only thing is, we charge a monthly rent. So every day, if you sit and work for about 2 to 3 hours, for a month, with weekly 5 days, approximately for about 16 classes in a month, we charge approximately 6 to 8,000 rupees per month. And you can invest this 6 to 8,000 rupees for about 1 month or 2 months. You can come to our studio, work on it, and later on, you can choose which machine is best for you, and you can invest it. So this is an option we are providing it. So now we know what is the basic system we need to run Unreal 5.5. And in our next session, we are going to actually see how we can install Unreal 5.5 and start working on it.